Hey friend, this is my first YouTube video and I'm doing it because we need to talk. If you haven't noticed in the world, chronic pain, catastrophic injuries that are preventable, youth sports injuries, joint replacements, lifestyle diseases are all on the rise despite advances in medicine, technology, training methodologies, clothing, whatever it is. Nothing is putting a dent in the statistics on these things. And I believe that the solution that is being provided to us is making us more confused, and it's pulling us further and further away from what the actual solution is. And I believe that solution is very simple, and it's to return to our original design as humans. And that's why I'm bringing you on a nature walk with me, barefoot, grounding. And walking by a stream of water. Now, some of this is man-made, but that's what I've got in Florida right now. But and it's to get back to moving the way that we were designed, eating the way we were designed, resting the way we were designed. And there are some very predictable characteristics and habits that go along with that. Good morning. And so, who am I? Why should you listen to me? I am Dr. Brandon Kyleman. I am a licensed physical therapist here in the state of Florida, in Winter Park. And I have been a licensed physical therapist for over 10 years. Worked with all ranges of people, different ages, different abilities, from 4 to 94, from your couch potato to your Olympic caliber world champion athlete. And there's a really common theme that everybody that comes to me that has pain has lost some of their just foundational human ability. Can't touch their toes, can't deep squat, can't single leg hinge, can't run, can't walk with fluidity and timing, rhythm. We've gotten off because the world pulls us away from it. So it's not your fault. It's not our fault. But I've been in the industry as a whole since I was 13. So I've been working out since I was 13. I've been training people since my early 20s, and I'm 42 now. And part of my journey is that I resolved almost a decade of chronic pain and multiple injuries and multiple body parts, all through movement and lifestyle habits alone. And so my goal here is to empower people my age or even younger or older to resolve their stuff so that they can be role models for the next generation, and we can save the next generation from the statistics that I'm about to tell you about. So when we look at something like chronic pain, some of the stats are, it's estimated, over 70% of Americans are dealing with chronic disease. We've got 80% of people deal with back pain across the lifespan. Now, we could say that and say, well, that's relatively normal, but we really need to not confuse common with normal. And roughly, 1 in 4 to 1 in 3 people have back pain right now. So chances are, if you're in a room with a handful of people, one of you or more is dealing with back pain. And when we take a look at joint replacements, they're scheduled to rise 682% by the year 2030. And it's there's more. So when we continue diving into this, we've got 70% of ACL tears are non-contact in nature. you should read that as preventable. Achilles tears are on the rise. There were 8 non-contact Achilles tears in the NBA playoffs alone last year. Some people like to chalk it up to load management, but I believe it starts at the feet, timing and rhythm, and they all kind of happen the same way, and nobody's addressing them. Everybody's addressing everything but the feet, and nobody's touching on the rhythm. Then when we look at running, roughly 70 to 80% of runners get injured every year. And we're putting more and more cushion underneath our feet in order to run, when we're meant to run barefoot on varied terrain for our entire lives. And guys, runners getting injured running to that extent is like almost every fish in the sea getting injured swimming every year. It just like it's a pretty bleak statistic. When we and I was in that statistic, right? I actually had to give up running for 3 years due to knee pain after meniscus tears from a ski accident. That traditional rehab didn't help me fix. And barefoot running is the thing that got me back. I've run pain-free for 15 years now. These stats, it's very clear that we're missing something, right? And so that's why we need to talk. We're completely missing the boat. And I think the solutions that are being pushed on us are confusing us. They're pushing us further and further away from the truth. And the truth is that there is a design to the human body, just like there's a design to a tiger. Every tiger basically moves the same way. Every human has a set of characteristics that defines how our design is supposed to play itself out in movement. And when we look at how that design is developed, it's in the first 6 years of child development, and it's fostered most effectively in a mostly natural environment. Now, some of that, again, is not our fault. So if we've lost some of that design, there's 2 things at play here. Our parents might have put us in clunky, high cushion shoes too early. They might have not allowed us to play barefoot outdoors. And they might have been overly protective. But as adults, we now have the opportunity to change and manipulate our environment to foster the restoration of these qualities. And there's not a lot of examples of what this looks like if it were to carry itself out across the lifespan, but there are some. And it is the barefoot, non-modernized indigenous tribes. There are some documentaries, look at like the Karubo tribe or the Zoe tribe. Even the indigenous tribes that adopt sandals start to move away from some of these characteristics. And so when we study, we have to put it in that category of what would happen if kids developed in a mostly natural environment, and what would that look like if we stayed in that mostly natural environment. And the reality is we would keep toddler-like mobility while adding on athleticism, basically, because we would basically just become really skilled hunters and gatherers. So, and that involves a high level of mobility, a high level of stamina, the ability to sprint on a whim, to jump on a whim, to navigate varied rough terrain, to rest on the ground, to throw, to swing, in order to hunt and to build. And so we look at those characteristics, and that's an athlete, right? So when we look at child development, that's the original framework by which we develop all these qualities. And in the first 6 years of life, we go through what's called the childhood neurodevelopmental sequence. And that is a series of 18 distinct predictable milestones that start with basic shapes and progress those basic shapes up to in complexity, skill, and capacity, so that we transform from babies with minimal to no control over anything, very reflexive driven, to mini parkour athletes who can who have perfect posture and mobility, can deep squat, touch their toes, run, jump, crawl, climb, fall, roll, play all day, every day with ease and without warm-up. And when we can retrace our steps through that process as adults on adult scale, and what I mean by that is, let's say a typical staircase. If we encounter a staircase at the age that we would typically encounter them, be interested in them, those 8-inch standard steps would be roughly knee height. When we look at a knee high, like imagine navigating a world, let's say you live in a 2-story house and all of your stairs were instead 16 to 24 inches knee height based on how tall you are, right? Your body proportions. That's basically like having to do a single leg squat every single step. So can you imagine predictably developing that kind of strength, body weight strength, awareness, control, and stamina? That's what I'm after, okay? That's what I think we're capable of. That's what I think our design is meant for. And I think we can all get that back. Again, personally, I had a really bad ankle sprain that led to back pain, meniscus tears, labral tears in both hips, labral tear on my left shoulder, multiple, tendinitises in multiple different body parts, and I solved them all through what I would call a predictable series of steps, right? So at age 25, I kind of got tired of having these limitations. I had given up running, couldn't lift the way I wanted to, and so I came across several movement influences and lifestyle nutritional influences that changed my perspective. From the dietary perspective, I tried clean eating, I tried vegetarian, tried vegan. All of those got me lean and feeling better initially, but then my health tanked. Allergies were worse than ever, especially on a vegan diet. And I was a whole foods vegan. I wasn't eating dairy-free and gluten-free crackers, because that's just not my personality. My personality is to understand, black and white things. But what resonated and fixed me was finding the paleo diet and the 30-day plan in the back of Rob Wolf's book called The Paleo Solution. That fixed allergies for me. It fixed my high blood pressure. And I did more of the autoimmune protocol because I had some sensitivities. But I got lean and I felt like I felt so good I could run through a brick wall if I needed to. The other thing, or the first movement influence that kind of changed my perspective was Kelly Starrett, and he had a video series called Mobility WOD, and his very first video he talked about the 10-minute squat test, which was we should all be able to sit in a deep squat like the indigenous people can with straight feet for at least 10 minutes. And that was something that was completely foreign to me. And I was like, oh, maybe that's what I'm missing. I've got no target for what I'm even supposed to be able to do. And so what was really powerful about his approach was, one, maybe there's a right way to move. Turns out there is. His solution didn't necessarily fix me, but what it did empower me to, right, was understand this journey, right? I can now do this where I couldn't get below parallel before. But it basically empowered me to understand that with something as simple as a ball or a foam roller or a band, I could change my body's perception of pain in less than 10 minutes a day of mobility work. And so I was like, oh, so I can change how I feel. I have power over this. The next influence was Ido Portal. and his video called Self Mastery. He was doing all this kind of like acrobatic stuff, just demonstrating just insane control over the body. And his main point was that with the right process, you could achieve basically anything. And so I was like, okay, that makes sense. He provided a bunch of free resources in his old blog, starting back in like 2009 or something like that. And so I read every single blog over and over again. And one of the things he talked about was this concept of joint care. Didn't really provide a joint care routine, but it made me start to dig into martial arts. I found a routine called joint rolling in Tai Chi. And I found a blurry video of some really skinny, very mobile Tai Chi master doing a routine. And I studied it over and over again and adopted my own routine that I teach to people now. But I did that routine for 7 years straight, even after I got out of pain. Didn't miss a single day in 7 years. And that that was like compound interest. I could finally, like my joints started to feel decongested. I could move better. I was starting to like have normal range of motion, which I didn't realize that like my neck was restricted, my shoulders were restricted, my mid-back was super locked up. And that I could change it with something so simple. The next came like ground movement, and that came from several systems, but the biggest influence was still Ido Portal. And so just getting back to the ground, I couldn't really do it at first, so I had a basic routine that was like breathing and a couple like kind of hip swivels and stuff like that, transitioning up and down from the ground. And then there was structural balance work in the Ido Portal method, which is based off of Charles Poliquin's work, structural balance protocols. And I, he didn't talk about the ratios, so I don't understand all the ratios with Poliquin and all that stuff. But I started to look at the bodies. Every single time I had an ability to compare left and right sides, I used that as a test. And so I developed this protocol with both symmetrical and asymmetrical positions. So I'm looking at front to back strength and mobility, side to side strength and mobility, and then just chipping away through regressions. As part of that journey as well came gymnastic strength training, and there was a program that I followed called Gymnastic Bodies, where when you were to progress a strength element, you had to progress a skill element as well, or a mobility element as well, knowing that at the higher strength elements, if you didn't have the mobility piece in place, you would just hit a hard stop wall, or you would compensate to the point where your body broke down. And so that made sense. I was like, okay, I can step by step rebuild my body, gain body weight control. And through that, I unlocked things like a pistol squat, handstands, back bridge, like all these things that just like weren't possible for me. And even later, I developed the full front splits, the pancake splits, German hang, stuff that like strict muscle ups, I just didn't think was possible without, I thought that was reserved for like hypermobile gymnasts, but it turns out it's just process. And so you just had to be okay with kind of starting over to regress to progress. And I was okay with that at that time because I had given up so much. Then there was barefoot running. And so that came on the scenes right before those 5-toed shoes, the Vibram 5 Fingers became popular. I was like, I got nothing left to lose. Grounding was like a little woo-woo at the time. Now it's like all the rage. But I did that way back in like 2009. And this was before it became popular. It was really like, it was just kind of shocking how simple it was. And what barefoot running taught me was, does my foot meet the ground with impact or is it responsive? And I did exclusively only drills for like 7 months and predictably rebuilt my ability to run. When I went to test myself, I went for a run and I just decided I'm going to go as far as I can, as far as it feels good, and then I'll stop. And I ran 7 miles, which was twice the longest distance I had ever run prior. And I ran those 7 miles at a 7-minute per mile pace. My prior best 5K, like per mile pace, was 8 minutes and 24 seconds. So I shaved off almost a minute and a half off of every mile by never training the distance. I only did drills exclusively, and so it was all focused on skill. So I developed the skill to run. I went from a heavy heel striker with heavy cushioned shoes, recommended to me, motion control shoes, recommended to me for my overpronation, and learned how to up my cadence, land properly, and then I became more of a midfoot striker and could run pain-free for kind of unlimited distance. Like I wasn't even that sore afterwards. So it's transformative. The only thing is, all these systems, while they restored me, they only got me to about 80-90%, which is great. However, the thing that was still kind of in my mind that I had encountered also in like that 2009, 2010 was Gray Cook talking about child development, like primitive patterns, and then when I studied it in school, thinking that was like the thing that should have been the thing that was focused on the most. We come up with all these random rehab exercises like clamshells and bird dogs and all this stuff, and literally everything from core development, mobility development, like elite mobility development, to jumping, sprinting, running, all the athletic qualities you would need, deep squatting, those are all predictably developed in child development, step by step. It's all there. So my final kind of like skill that was developed was learning slow motion video through Jose Bosch. And I came to different conclusions about that stuff. I had already been looking at indigenous people and children, and I'd studied child development for 10 years, but learning slow motion video, I now had a new level of scrutiny for everything I had ever done. I had already mapped out like the adult version of going through child development back in 2009, and was using it in clinic and in my training clients, and in my, when I was a very first year as a licensed PT, some of the older PTs said my movement knowledge was, 10 to 15 years ahead of where most people enter, because I had already, and he hadn't even seen half of what I knew, honestly. But it was one of those things where I was already on the track, and so, but being able to now have the skill of scrutiny, I went back and looked at child development. I looked at my boys and their development and their old videos, and it just turns out that what I had been interested in all along was the answer. Other systems use bits and pieces of child development, but then they go and try to reverse engineer the athlete. And that was that approach. I gave it a shot. It wrecked my feet. It took away my ability to walk and run barefoot pain-free, because it shoved me so far to the outside part of my foot that it locked my foot into a rigid platform. And when you look at the indigenous people and the kids, they have very strong feet, but they're very pliable feet. They might show the behavior of staying strong when it's under pressure, but it's extremely pliable at the same time. And so when I walked my own self back through child development, all the other advanced stuff could not unlock my ankles. Every time I do advanced stretching protocols, loaded stretching, all the mobility work, different types of contraction, PNF, I literally threw everything at my ankles, and I kept getting a pinch every time I would make some improvement. Nothing took away the pinch until I restudied child development and walked back through those steps, really found in the first 13 to 15 months of life. And that's when we developed the ability to kind of start to pick something up from a deep squat. So I unlocked my deep squat for the first time with straight feet. And then I started to be able to, I was developing a first step that I'd never had. I had a 32-inch vertical in high school from that program, but I was always kind of slow, right? And that was why I could last for a long time, but my like 5K time was always abysmal. But I started to develop like the rhythm and understanding of fluidity, and so that's where I started to look at like how babies crawl. Found that the systems that were talking about crawling had the crawling wrong when you actually look at how babies crawl. And so I started diving deep into how to crawl with more detail, how the foot anchors when it's holding pressure in order to load the hip. And so I discovered how the foot works and how everything syncs up together. And that is the process I teach now. So, and that's what I wish I would have had at the very beginning. So all that to say, that's my journey. And I use that same process now in my face-to-face clients. I've been in business on my own for 7 years, and have been using this to provide far better results than the traditional industries. And we have clear targets, right? So it's not, what do we do with clamshells and bridges and stuff? Like, you're just supposed to do those like basics the rest of your life. Maybe you're supposed to maintain them, just kind of integrate it into daily life. But am I supposed to add resistance? I need a new movement? Like we're just typically discharged with not a good understanding of what we're supposed to. And really the journey is not done until all the human foundations are set. And that's, you should be able to deep squat, touch toes, single leg hinge, get up and down from the ground with ease, explosiveness even, run, jump, walk with fluidity, stand in a way that doesn't bother you if you have to stand for a long period of time, and be free. You should be able to move freely so that you can play. And the goal is not to just exercise more, it's to be able to play more. So that's a simple solution to all this stuff, is to return back to the source. It's to the process that I kind of lay out is thinking about gaining awareness. What should the body be able to do? What can I do right now? How do I close that gap? Then I'm gonna adopt a daily movement routine that brings youthfulness and decongestion to my body head to toe. Then I'm going to address left and right side differences, asymmetries, and begin to tackle those nagging injuries. And then I'm gonna rebuild my feet so that I have a firm but pliable foundation for movement and athleticism for life. And then I'm going to dive deep into retracing my steps in child development so that I learn retrain that my default movement is what I was naturally born with as a child. And so I'm going to restore that childlike movement freedom, which can translate to lifelong athleticism. And that's the process that I'm laying out, promoting for people. And I've started a community to educate people on this process, and I'll provide that link in the description below. The goal of this is to equip the older generation to fix their own stuff, and I'll try to guide you on that pathway in that community, with the end goal really of feeling empowered to know how to assess and address the next generation to save them from a life of chronic pain that we all seem destined for according to the statistics. A lot of times kids go through growth spurts that take their mobility away, and then we go into a modern world that tries to steal it away more, and then we can get caught in that cycle for life, really. And so if you want an example of that, I made a post in my Instagram where my son went to soccer camp and they put him through some abysmal looking wall sits, and he came back and he couldn't deep squat for the first time in his life at age almost 8. And I gave him 3 exercises to finish the night with and restored that before he even went to bed that night. And it's that simple when it's that young. And so I think that that's where it starts. It starts with us being the examples, fixing our own stuff, having the knowledge to help our kids when they get stuck, and to reset them, keep their body on track. Especially as early specialization in sports keeps getting pushed, we have to have something that keeps that original design in place as kids grow. So again, check out the link in the description, and like and subscribe this account. Drop your comments if you resonate with anything here, and hope to have another chat in the woods about new stuff. So let me know what you want to hear more about, and I'm here to help. So I'll hope to see you inside the community. If not, I'll see you here in the next video.